are listening to In a City Like Yours, a semi-monthly podcast featuring interesting people with interesting life stories. This podcast may contain language and/or subject matter not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm your host, Michael G. Moore. In this episode, I chat with Chuck. Chuck is well known in the art circles of Shreveport, Louisiana. We talk about art and the local art scene, K-pop, Wold Newton, cartooning, and why he is really not an asshole. If you ask him, he'd say he's an okay guy, and I tend to agree. Here's Chuck's story.
My name is Chuck Loredens, and I live in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm 54 years old. My main job, bread and butter job, is I'm a groundskeeper at Ochsner's LSU Health Shreveport. And after that, I go and I teach different types of art to kids at the Renzi Center. And I'm kind of an artist myself. I don't necessarily try to sell things professionally a lot, but I just like to make art. I like to think of myself as very creative, and there's a lot of mediums and genres I like to dabble in.
I would consider you actually a local celebrity in the art scene.
A local asshole, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm known by some people. Not a lot of the younger people might not know me, but I mean, you and I go way back in the local art scene, all the way back to the '80s. I remember my entry to Shreveport art scene was hanging out with you and Debbie Allen, and meeting people like Mike Harold, and hanging out at Artist Transit. Bart Gross, Joe DeSantis, so many incredible artists. I was just mostly, hanging out and just being a wide-eyed kid and watching what you guys were doing. But yeah,
that was a while back. You mentioned the Renzi Center. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, the Renzi Center is an after-school program. It was started by our Sisters of Holy Sorrows, teaming up with an incredible local artist named Donna Service. And they took two old houses on what's normally considered kind of a dangerous street and turned them into an after-school program. One house has academics where kids get homework help, math, stuff like that. And then there's the art house where you got like some of the most interesting, colorful artists in Shreveport and Bossier, teaching kids their craft.
That's where you hang out mostly, is the art center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where my heart lives. It's over on Egan Street, near where the old Coca-Cola bottling plant is, and I've actually been there longer than any other teacher. I started in 1999, and I've taught cartooning, helped the kids make their own comic books. Just regular drawing, acting, improv. We did radio shows, and now I'm doing a filmmaking class there too, making short films. The first thing I ever did with the Renzi Center was, and it was mostly Donna Service was the one that asked me to do it, because back in the days of Neon Saturday Nights, I used to make these. I made like giant monster costumes out of paper mache, and I would walk around the square, because back in those days, Shrek did interesting stuff like that. Shreveport Regional Arts Council, they had a thing called Neon Saturday Night, which was a big arts festival, and they would hire local artists to come up with concepts, and that was a concept I came up with from watching old Godzilla movies, that I said I want to dress up like a giant monster and walk around downtown. So Donna Service remembered that, and the first thing that I did with the Renzi Center was a summer theatrical production of Stuart Little. It was an adaptation of Stuart Little, and she hired me to do costumes, which I thought was bizarre at first, because I don't sew, but it was because I'd made the paper mache costumes. So I did that. The next year we did another play. The next year we did another play. The whole time I was doing costuming. And shortly after that, like the next year, we lost the place where we did plays, the venue. And I suggested to Donna that we make short films instead, so it became a film camp. We did that for about 10 years, and then they couldn't, my job wouldn't allow me to take 3 weeks off in the summer for that. So then we, I think it was Christy Kirkley's idea to turn it into a music video camp. So that's what we do now. But yeah, after doing that first play, Donna Service asked me if I wanted to come back and just teach in the fall. And so I did, and I've been doing it ever since. It's coming up on 20 years for me.
What's the age range of the kids you work with?
7 to 17.
Oh, I didn't realize they were that old, some of them.
Yes, I mean, they usually, when they get, they start going through puberty and they're more interested in, being teenagers and stuff. And very, very rarely do they hang out up to 17, but it has happened. We have had some groups of teens that loved the Renzi Center so much that, they just hung out.
How do the students get into the program?
Well, there's a little bit of a waiting list, but you call the number. You can find it online. You call up and ask if there's any openings, and it's free. It's absolutely free. And you got kids from the inner city, in there side by side, drawing and coloring, and making things right next to kids from more affluent neighborhoods. It's a beautiful thing.
How has it affected your life and your art?
Well, it reminds me, it's affected my life because it's like it's my purpose. It's really what I live for. When I was a kid, I was one of those kids that was always being sent out in the hall for being disruptive and so forth. And now I get to work with those same kids because I remember there were a few teachers who saw beyond, me being just a little jerk and saw that I actually had some talent somewhere. And it's like, I like finding that in these kids. It's like some of these kids don't even know have these talents. And, I help them discover it. And that's very gratifying. I love working with the kids. It's like I'm a kid. The thing about kids are the most naturally gifted artists. They're the most pure artists because when you're a kid, the thought goes right from your brain to the canvas or to the paper or whatever it is you're doing without any fear of what anybody else thinks. When you start getting older, it goes from your brain to, well, what is that person going to think? Is it going to impress that person? Is it going to make me any money? And it's no longer pure. So children are the best artists because their work is pure because it goes straight from their head to the canvas.
Yeah, it's like a lot of well-known artists kind of strive for that look, to go back to the time of their childhood and achieve that spontaneity and look of their art, like Picasso. And
well, Picasso himself, I think it was a quote where he said, all children are artists. The struggle is remaining one when you become an adult, after basically, and this is me adding to his quote, but just basically after, a lot of times it gets beaten out of you. You're told not to mess around with foolishness like that, and if you can't draw with photorealism, people just say like, well, why are you still doing this? Which is ridiculous.
I asked some of our patrons on Facebook if they wanted to ask you a couple of questions. What would that be? So I'm going to ask you one of those right now.
Okay.
From Kathleen T. Where did the persona, the Savage Chuck, come from?
Okay. Well, back in the day, we used to. I was a part of the whole group that was involved with the Center for Contemporary Arts, and and you knew this name was going to come in eventually. Donna Moore, who was my mentor, my best friend, my sister, everything. She was everything to me, and the most incredible artist this area's ever known. I'm a little biased, but I just think she was the most. She did the murals at the Strand, as you well know, because she loved you too, Michael. We were getting ready for a performance night that I can't remember the guy's name, but he was hosting it, and he asked me if I wanted to do anything. And I remember, because I've always read comic books, Tarzan novels, science fiction, fantasy. I am complete and utter geek. I absolutely live on this stuff. And I remember one time, I think I was living in the garage apartment behind my older brother's house. And for some reason, I just woke up, I was getting dressed for work, and I just started singing the Savage Chuck, the Savage Chuck, the Savage, 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 Savage Chuck. And it was just kind of an absent-minded thing. And then I said, this could be a performance piece. And I put together a loincloth from an old caveman costume. This was in the, I think this was in the 90s. Yeah, it was in the mid-90s or late 90s when I did this. And I did this whole thing where I came out talking like this, holding a plastic sword, and introduced myself as the Savage Chuck and sang my theme song, wrestled inflatable dinosaurs to the Johnny Quest theme song, and Donna Moore came out dressed as the Black Power Ranger and lectured me about the evils of smoking. And my friend and collaborator Michael Stone came out as Commando Mike and was a part of it. It was just a fun collaboration, and we had a really good audience. And so for years after that, I could just be walking down the street and somebody would yell out, "Savage Chuck!" So that was the origin of that. And Kathleen T is well aware of that, as she was there at that performance and, a close member of our little clique.
Yeah, and I think the MC for that night was Joe Arts.
I remember he was wearing like a top hat, like a magician's top hat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his friend, God, what was his name? Who did the accordion, cornpone?
God, man, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. See, these kids today don't even know. They don't even know.
This one's from Mimi W.
Yeah.
What are your
good buddy?
What are your artistic influences over the years?
Okay, well, you were one.
Oh, well, thank you.
Michael G. Moore. Of course, Donna Moore, no relation. Donna Service, George Burton, the poet, George Burton III. Drew Hunter, also known as Dr. Blood, was an influence on me in my teen years.
Yeah, you were involved with theater with him.
Right, and even before that, I lived in this weird mountain town that my mom moved me to when I was 13 or 14. And I mean, everybody there was related to each other, and everybody was hardcore conservative and pretty racist. But there was this one teacher I had named Mrs. Haley. She goes by the name Jinx Haley, and she was like super liberal. And she taught the English and grammar classes, but she also started the theater group. And she saw potential. This was in junior high, and she was just awesome. I remember her standing up when talking about Shakespeare and said that, yes, Shakespeare was bisexual. And several of these, oh, he's a fag. And she said, don't you dare call him that. And this was in the 70s. This was like 78 in a redneck mountain town. And she said, there's nothing wrong with being gay. In a school where other teachers had like the Confederate flag symbols on their belt buckles. She had the guts to say that. And I'm proud to say that she's one of my Facebook friends today. She's completely awesome. But yeah, Michael Harold was an influence. His Debbie, our mutual friend, Debbie Allen, was a big influence on me. Now, was the question friends who are artists or just artists in general?
Well, it could be anybody, really.
Edgar Rice Burroughs is the guy who wrote Tarzan. Philip Jose Farmer, who was a huge influence on me. Jack Kirby, Joe Kubert, so many of my favorite comic book writers and artists. All of these people influenced me.
Yeah, that brings us into a question from Teresa M. When and why did you come to love cartooning and superheroes so much?
Well, I mean, I don't understand how anybody doesn't. I remember loving comic books before I can even read, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to learn, that I picked up reading so fast, because I had to know what was going on in those stories. I mean, to a certain extent, the sequential art, already told the story, but I had to know everything. And I just remember early superhero comics and cartoons, and just, that's the fantasy of, back then, the fantasy was being a hero and somebody who was important, and, having these powers that you can use to help people and have adventures. And, sadly nowadays more about just, who's the biggest badass. But back then it was the fantasy of being someone who could actually help people, somebody who was super powerful And, the whole Spider-Man thing, with great power comes great responsibility. The opposite of Ayn Rand.
Do you think the market is oversaturated now?
Oh hell no! God, there's so much good stuff out there. I've loved all the Marvel movies. Just this Friday, they premiered the Doom Patrol on the DC Universe app, the streaming app, and it's always been my favorite comic book, super team, and the show is incredible. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it to you. I think you'd love it, Michael. It's incredible. You can do stuff with the superhero genre that you can't do in anything else. I mean, this is our mythology. This is the myths for our modern age. And no, it's not oversaturated. I love the fact that, when I was in high school, I was a closet comic book reader. I was afraid if I was in a Circle K and any girls walked in, I would put the comic down and pick up a Sports Illustrated, even though I don't give a flying fuck about football or sports, because I was ashamed, because it was like back then you'd be ostracized if you were over the age of 12 and you still loved comic books. Nowadays it's a lot more accepted, and I do love the fact that it's mainstream now.
From Bradley M., what is your interest in K-pop all about, and how has it changed your life?
Okay, I used to love a lot of punk and new wave, and for some reason I was working with some younger guys in our work truck, and they kept it on certain radio stations where it was just, all the songs were about fucking or violence, or how much drugs you're going to sell, and I'm going to beat that pussy up, and and it was like I started just, for the stuff that I listened to on my personal listening device, my MP3 player, I just started like going back to like just really good pop bubblegum stuff from like the 60s and 70s, because it was just it calmed me and made me happy. So one of my students at the Renzi Center a couple of years ago asked to listen to, from my phone, she asked if I would play this one song on my phone called Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I was saying, what? I thought she was talking about the old band from the 70s, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So I put it in, and it was this boy K-pop group called BTS. And the song is very interesting. The video is a work of art. But I watched that on my YouTube account. So when I got home and turned on my Roku to watch YouTube on the big screen to catch up on my nerd stuff, it started suggesting all these K-pop songs, and a lot of them were like girl K-pop songs, and they're just so positive. They don't stick to any one genre of music. The music is like a combination of like current hip hop with 60s and 70s bubblegum with a little bit of disco thrown in. Everything, there's melodies, and there's like, some of the groups have 9 members in them, and every member of the group takes a turn at singing. It's kind of like, picture if Diana Ross and the Supremes was just the Supremes, and Diana Ross sang a verse and then stepped over, and Mary Wilson stepped in the middle and started singing, while Diana Ross sang backup dance for her.
Forgive my ignorance, but K-pop, K stands for Korean.
Korean.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah, it's from South Korea, and it's like when they split off from North Korea, they got their own identity, and the music just makes me extremely happy. And one of the things, I got to go with my best friend Misha Farrell. She took me to Houston for my birthday, and I got to see my absolute favorite K-pop group, Oh My Girl, in concert, and it was a religious experience. And I'm so thankful to her. I love her so much, and she enjoyed it with me, but it was incredible. But yeah, I think you'd like some K-pop. I remember working with you in your studio one time. I was making this big paper mache head, and you played this CD of a group called Echo Belly, and I think I stole that CD from you, because it wasn't depressing stuff, and she had this great upbeat, peppy voice, and that's like really good bubblegum, even though it's talking about some the lyrics are very poetic and everything. But yeah, I really like that. But K-pop even kicks it up a notch. So it's the music I love, and most people hate it. A lot of people, they hear it and they, K-pop, what's wrong with you? But it's like, I'm 54. I don't have guilty pleasures anymore. I like what I like, and it just makes that. I'm at work using a chainsaw, and I'm like got K-pop girl groups in my MP3 player, and it gives me energy and makes me happy. Oh My Girl, Twice, and G-Friend are my three favorite groups.
Now
Yeah.
I want to ask you about Wold Newton.
Wold Newton. Okay. When I was, I told you my favorite fictional character of all time is Tarzan of the Apes. Started becoming fascinated in him from the old Johnny Weissmuller movies that they showed on Dialing for Dollars Theater, and reading the Joe Kubert DC comics, and then discovering the Tarzan novels at the library across the street when I was 10 years old. And I just fell in love with them. And also discovered a really cool old pulp character called Doc Savage that they were reprinting in paperbacks around that same time. One year I was visiting a library, I think in Bossier City. I think I was 11 or 12. And I was walking by the biography section, and I saw a book that said Doc Savage's Apocalyptic Life. I was like, oh, Doc Savage. And it was weird that it was in the biography section. And I opened it up, and there was this family tree that showed that Tarzan, Doc Savage, James Bond, Sherlock Holmes, Horatio Hornblower, so many great fictional characters were all part of this family tree. And I checked the book out of the library, and it went into this incredible detail showing how these characters were all related, and it was this brainchild of a Hugo Award-winning author named Philip Jose Farmer. So that book just blew me away, and years later I found my own copy and reread it, found out that he had written a book previous to that called Tarzan Alive, which talked about the same stuff. And I became obsessed with this concept. But really nobody else understood it. Nobody else got it. No, people would just look at me like I was weird when I would talk about it. So cut forward to 1998, and I'm hanging out with Donna Moore when she was still working at Schrack in their old offices. And it was like back then, it was like only very few middle class to poor people had high speed internet. So they used to have Donna working late till about midnight, and I'd go hang out with her, and she'd let me play around on the internet. And after years of looking for other people into Wold Newton, I stumbled across this website called the Wold Newton Universe. And this guy named Win Scott Eckert had compiled all this information on his website. And I just started I said, Donna, can I print this stuff out? And she said, yeah, it's not my printer. So I just started, copying everything he had, just sheet after sheet, using the hole puncher and put it in a big binder. So it was like, even though I couldn't get on the internet myself, at home I had this huge binder full of all this information. I also, before that, had decided to write my own Wold Newton article showing how Tarzan was the father of British spy goddess Modesty Blaise. And I saw that this guy on this website was accepting articles. So I wrote I written the article, sent it into him, and he put it on his website. And this guy, Win Eckert, and I became friends. And he started like a secret internet group. And so there's like people from all over the world that were just as obsessed with this thing as me. And we all started collaborating on articles together, helping each other out with, this concept. Win Eckert, Dennis Power, Christopher, Paul Carey, Matthew Baugh, John Small, Loki Carbus, Brad Mingle, a bunch of us. And it was like we became like this tight group of friends. A couple of years later, some of us actually went to San Diego Comic-Con, and we did this 3 years in a row where we did panels talking about Wold Newton. And then we had a book published called Myths for the Modern Age, where my Daughters of Tarzan article was published. And then we actually got to go to Philip Jose Farmer's house and meet him like the year before he died. A lot of them are now professional writers. My friend Christopher Paul Carey, who was a member of our group, is now in charge of publishing at Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc., the the company that owns Tarzan and all those characters. And we get together every year, like Pulp Fest and stuff like that, and hang out. And it's like this fun little tribe of geeks. Okay, and there's also Win Eckert's Wold Newton Universe website. It's funny because if you actually look up Modesty Blaze, if you go to the Modesty Blaze Wikipedia page, it references my article. I think also on the Tarzan Wikipedia page, it references my theory. Several of my Wold Newton friends started a publishing company called Meteor House, and where they've printed a lot of lost works of Philip Jose Farmer, published a lot of his short stories, and actually published continuations of some series that he'd started with new authors. My friend Win Eckert got to finish a novel that Philip Jose Farmer had started about the granddaughter of a bronzed adventurer. No, the daughter of a bronzed adventurer. And my friend Christopher Paul Carey got to continue Philip Jose Farmer's Ancient Opar series. And the president of Meteor House is my friend Mike Croteau, and I wanted to mention him too. I also want to talk about, collaborators. I love to collaborate on things, and I also love collaborating with my friends Donnie and Mimi Webb, doing the haunted house, whatever haunted house project we're doing, or just doing performance art together. I have to mention them because we're all part of Gaslight. We brought Gaslight back.
Now, that's Gaslight Theater, right?
Yeah. And they're both extremely talented, brilliant people, and they're fun to work with. But I also wanted to talk about some of the artists in Shreveport, current artists, who I really respect. One who is from the days of Donna Moore and Donna Service, the days of Center for Contemporary Arts, as I would like to mention. I think she's the most incredible, brilliant, genius choreographer in Northwest Louisiana, and probably North Louisiana, and that's Renee Smith. She's incredible. But like some of the younger artists that I really admire, I really like Ben Moss. There's Micah Harold, who there's nothing he can't do, from music to, painting to tattoos. But Hillary Frazier is another really good artist, extremely talented.
Bill Jingles.
Yeah.
Alan Dyson.
Well, of course, I think I did mention Alan before. Yeah, Alan.
He's a musician.
Alan and Donna Moore collaborated on several songs that are very special to me. And Alan, of course, does the house concerts. I mean, he's always working.
Yeah, for our listeners, all these people can be located through Google. I think almost everybody has a website or a Facebook page by now. So if you like,
I'm also friends with the first show you did, Bradley Massengill. In fact, about a month ago, he had a Mole People show, and he asked for people to come in and do stuff. And I did a performance piece where I did the Savage Chuck character, came out and shot people with a Nerf gun, shot people in the audience. It was a lot of fun. But Bradley's exceptional. I really love his music, and it's fun to work with him. And I'm hoping he does a lot more, whether it's his Skyped concerts from his living room, or whether he does more Mole People shows. I really like his stuff. Not too long ago at Mini Cine, Renee had a brand new piece, and I was just mesmerized. I was just absolutely enchanted because a lot of people had never seen her work before. They didn't even see her when she was running Escaped Images out at Centenary. Unfortunately, they closed that dance program down. But she's absolutely brilliant. And some of these people that I've been talking about her for so long said, "Okay, Chuck, I see what you mean now."
I feel like we kind of glazed over your youth. Why don't we go back? Why don't we go back and talk about it some?
Okay. I'm the fourth of four kids. The first 12 years of my life, I grew up in Minden, Louisiana. It was a real cool house, catty-cornered. Across the street was a big library. So I would go over there with my older sister, Nana, until I could cross the street by myself. And then, I lived at the library. I always had books on my nightstand. My parents divorced like right after I was born, so I was raised by my mom, my older brother, and two older sisters. around 12, we moved to Albany, Georgia. Then at like 13 or 14, moved to Clarksville, Georgia, with my mom and the guy she married. And then I got tired of that. And about 16, I moved back to Louisiana and lived with my dad and his wife out in Dogwood. And I went to Airline High School. And I've always loved drawing. I've always loved comic books. Good escapism.
You got brothers and sisters?
Yeah, my oldest brother Maurice. People around here know him because he's always on his bicycle. He's a lawyer, but he also loves tinkering on bikes and talking more people into riding bikes. He likes to go talk with city planning to make things better for bicyclists. Everybody knows Maurice. My oldest sister Jenny Virginia, who's an actress. Retired actress. She lives in Pensacola, Florida, with her husband, Steve. Is my sister Nana, who is she's got 3 kids. They're all grown. My brother Maurice has twins, Henri and Michelle. Henri's a school teacher. Michelle's an actress in L.A. My sister Nana has 3 kids. Her oldest is named Xander. He's a computer guy in California. My really cool niece, Liz, who works with my sister at Community Renewal, and my nephew, Dan, who is a CPA in Manhattan, but is also a musician. And they're all grown. And no grand nieces or nephews yet.
You have anything else you'd like to say?
I'm not really an asshole. Sometimes I've been known to criticize, make my voice known about, art organizations that I feel like aren't living up to their potential or being what the art community really needs. And I've been labeled asshole for that. There might have been some artists that I might have criticized, but I really think I've moved beyond that, because one of the things that being a K-pop fan has taught me is that promote what you love, and just if there's something you don't like, there's no point in criticizing it. That rule doesn't apply for politics, but if I don't like somebody's art, if I think somebody's lame, it's like there's no point in talking about it. I would rather just promote what I love from now on. I'm trying to follow that philosophy. But yeah, I'm trying not to be an asshole in that regard.
And you found the zen of working on a grounds crew.
Yeah. Whether it's putting in irrigation systems or just because I've always loved digging in the dirt, pulling weeds, mowing grass, edging, pruning trees, climbing up in a tree with a chainsaw. I do it all. Or just picking up cigarette butts that people have thrown down. I get to be outside all day, and I'm listening to K-pop, and I've got working at the hospital's cool. I get all the benefits, insurance, and all that stuff, and it pays nice. I like to pay, and the hours are from 6 to 2:30, so that gives me plenty of time for Renzi afterwards.
Well, I want to ask you for some words of wisdom.
Well, my friend Livette, who's now a councilwoman, now on the Shreveport City Council, whenever she talks about me, she says that I am a fierce defender of kids' rights to be kids. And I wear that mantle proudly. Kids should have a right to be a kid, to enjoy their youth. And that's one of the things I love doing at the Renzi Center, is like helping them develop the skills to show that incredible imagination that they have. Instead of just, letting it be pushed down like society does it, like society tells them they're freaks or unnatural or something. I would rather them, look, you find your medium, because every kid is an artist. I just help them. And I don't help them to develop their artistic skills just to try to become a professional artist. Because, not everybody can be a professional artist, but, anybody can work their 9-to-5 job and still go home and paint a picture or write a poem. whether it's, even if nobody else looks at it. That's the important thing, is finding an outlet to express themselves. And that's the most important thing. That's why kids should learn art, not because they are going to become professional artists some days, but because they need that outlet. Kids got stuff to say too, and it's powerful, and it is dramatic, and it's intense.
Yeah, one thing that the Shreveport Regional Arts Council does that I'm very pro for is their art break.
Oh, art break! Shrek does a lot of great things. I've never criticized Shrek for being Shrek. Little things here and there they might do, I've criticized, but no, I'm glad Shrek exists. If Pam Atchison hears this by chance, thank you, Pam. Thank you for all you do, because I do appreciate that Shrek exists. I also forgot to mention, you and I are on the board of another organization called Works in Progress, and working with Alan Dyson and Debbie. That's a very fulfilling thing, because if for the people that can't might be overlooked by Shrek, they can work with us. We're there for them.